You know Doug E. Fresh, the world's greatest entertainer, the man who gave us the human beatbox and created the show back in 1985. A true hip-hop legend who changed music forever alongside his partner, Slick Rick. But behind all that fame and innovation lies a story most people never talk about. Decades of crushing debt, tax troubles that just won't quit, and a famous falling out with his greatest collaborator. How does someone who helped build hip hop end up fighting foreclosures, battling the IRS for millions, and spending years in courtrooms? Let's break down what really happened. The year 2008 hit Doug E. Fresh like a freight train. We're not talking about one problem here. This was a complete financial meltdown on every front. 3 of his Harlem homes faced foreclosure because of unpaid mortgages totaling nearly $3.5 million. Just one of those properties alone had over $1.7 million in missed payments. But the real estate crisis was only part of the disaster. The IRS slapped him with a federal tax lien for somewhere between $367,000 and $376,000. And if that wasn't enough, he owed almost $60,000 on an American Express card. When you default on mortgages, taxes, and credit cards all at once, that's not bad luck. That's a pattern. This wasn't about the housing market crashing. This was about years of spending more than he made and ignoring the bills piling up around him. You might think things got better after that wake-up call. They didn't. A few years later, another bomb dropped. The IRS came back with a new lien, this time for over $2.2 million in unpaid taxes. Think about that for a second. After already owing hundreds of thousands to the government, he racked up another $2 million plus in tax debt. When news outlets reported this second lien, they made sure to point out that he'd been in tax trouble before. This wasn't a one-time mistake anymore. It was a habit. Most people who get hit with an IRS lien work out a payment plan or make changes to avoid it happening again. Not here. The debt just kept growing year after year, proving that whatever caused the 2008 collapse never actually got fixed. It's wild that while all this was happening, Doug E. Fresh was trying to launch a restaurant in Harlem called Doug E's Chicken and Waffles. The storefront opened back in April 2007, right before everything fell apart. But the restaurant itself didn't actually open until November 2010. That's more than 3 years of delays by the time people could finally order chicken and waffles. He was already buried under that massive second tax lien. Opening a restaurant is expensive and risky, even when your finances are solid. Doing it while you're millions in debt to banks and the IRS, that's either desperate or completely out of touch with reality. Fresh said the restaurant was about giving back to the community and creating jobs for local teens. Noble words, but hard to square with a man who couldn't pay his own bills. The legal battles didn't stop in 2008 or 2010. They're still going on today. In 2019, Fresh filed a $4 million lawsuit against a neighbor and some contractors. He claimed construction work on the property next door caused major damage to a Harlem brownstone he was managing for someone who'd passed away. Water leaks, rats, structural problems, the whole 9 yards. But the most heartbreaking fight is the one happening right now. In 2025, Doug E. Fresh is in court trying to stop Deutsche Bank from foreclosing on his late mother's Harlem brownstone. She bought that house in 2007. The missed mortgage payments, they date back to 2008, the same year everything else collapsed. When she died in 2014, he inherited the property and the debt that came with it. Deutsche Bank got a foreclosure judgment in 2023 and scheduled the auction for September 2024. Fresh filed an emergency motion to block it, arguing the bank rushed the process and didn't tell him what was happening. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about losing his mother's home, his family's legacy in a neighborhood that's changing fast. We've been talking about money problems, but there's another part of this story that's just as messy. The relationship between Doug E. Fresh and Slick Rick. In 1985, they were unstoppable. The show and La Di Da Di weren't just hits. They changed hip-hop. Fresh's beatboxing created this incredible rhythm and Rick's storytelling over it was pure magic. La Di Da Di became one of the most sampled songs in music history. These two came out of nowhere and became global stars almost overnight. It looked like the beginning of something legendary. Instead, it fell apart in less than a year. Slick Rick left the Get Fresh crew before they could even build on that success. Why? Well, it depends on who you ask. Slick Rick has never been shy about why he left. It was about money, plain and simple. In interviews, he said the pay wasn't fair. He gave an example where if they made $6,000 for a show, he'd only get 600 of it, 10%. He felt like his talent was being wasted and he wasn't getting what he deserved. So he decided to leave and go solo. No drama, he said, just business. Doug E. Fresh tells a completely different story. He says it had nothing to do with money. They were just young artists creating something new, and they both needed space to grow on their own. Two different creative forces that needed room to breathe. He insists there was never any real beef between them, that they're still family, still close, still do shows together. It all sounds friendly and mature. Here's the thing, those two versions don't match up at all. Rick says it was about unfair money. Fresh says it was about artistic growth and never mentions money. One of them is telling the full truth, and one of them is leaving out the most important part. Given everything we now know about Doug E. Fresh's financial history, decades of debt and mismanagement, Rick's version starts to make a lot more sense. If Fresh couldn't handle his own money years later, it's easy to believe he wasn't handling it well back then either. Fresh's explanation sounds like someone trying to protect the legacy, to keep things looking good on the surface. And to be fair, that makes sense. That names are tied together forever. Why air out dirty laundry about money when you can say it was just two artists finding their own paths? These days, Doug E. Fresh and Slick Rick do perform together. They headline old school hip hop concerts. They showed up at the Soul Train Awards in 2013. They've been touring as part of Legends of Hip Hop packages for years now. There's even a 40th anniversary vinyl of La Di Da Di, and the show coming out in 2025. Fresh says the energy on stage is still real, still has impact, and he's probably right about that. Fans love seeing them together, but let's be honest about what this is. This is business. They're worth more together than apart. Their combined brand is powerful. Nostalgia sells. The beef, whatever it really was, got buried under the need to make money off their shared history. It works for both of them, so they keep doing it. But that doesn't mean the original problem ever got solved. It just means they found a way to profit from it. So what do we make of all this? On one hand, Doug E. Fresh is a pioneer, a true innovator who gave hip-hop something it never had before. On the other hand, he spent decades drowning in debt, fighting the IRS, and battling in courtrooms over property and money. He founded hip-hop public health. He works with Harlem Hospital. He talks about not wanting to be financially rich and spiritually bankrupt. He says he teaches his sons not to make money their God. All of that sounds great. But then you look at the court records, the tax liens, the foreclosures, the lawsuits. It's hard to ignore the gap between what he says and what the documents show. Maybe it's not about being fake. Maybe it's more complicated than that. A lot of early hip-hop artists got burned. They came from nothing, suddenly had money, and had no idea how to manage it. The industry wasn't set up to help them either. Doug E. Fresh wasn't alone in facing IRS trouble. Snoop Dogg, Lil Wayne, Method Man, Nas, MC Hammer, they all had tax problems. Will Smith owed the IRS $2.8 million and almost went bankrupt before the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air saved his career. These guys didn't grow up learning about taxes and investments and financial planning. They were young, they were talented, and they got rich fast in an industry that didn't protect them. Fresh's story is part of a bigger pattern that doesn't excuse the choices he made, but it does explain how someone so successful could end up so broke. Maybe his community work and his talk about staying humble is genuine. Maybe it's his way of trying to build something positive out of all the mistakes. Maybe he's trying to make sure the next generation doesn't fall into the same traps. Or maybe it's just good PR. We'll never know for sure. What we do know is this: you can't tell the full story of Doug E. Fresh without talking about the foreclosures, the tax debt, the lawsuits, and the split with Slick Rick. The financial chaos isn't some footnote, it's a huge part of who he is. The legend and the struggle are the same story. To understand one, you have to understand the other. Doug E. Fresh gave us the human beatbox and some of the greatest tracks in hip hop history. He also gave us a cautionary tale about what happens when talent and fame aren't matched with the knowledge to manage them. Both of those things are true. Both of those things matter. So what do you think? Does the music outweigh the mess? Or does the mess change how you see the music? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.